I never told my son that I earn $40,000 a month. Not because I was ashamed, but because I wanted to know if he didn't know, would he still treat me like a mother or like an investment? In Ethan's eyes, I was just a silver-haired woman who woke up early, wore the same white shirt to work, and came home smelling of coffee and paper. A simple mom, a quiet one. I let him believe that for more than 10 years. I lived in a small apartment in Savannah's old quarter, low ceilings, white walls, a ceiling fan that clicked all night. The neighbors thought I was a secretary. No one knew that every evening I opened my laptop and reviewed international reports, signing contracts worth millions. I kept quiet, not out of fear, but because real power never needs to announce itself. That Tuesday afternoon, I had just finished a video call with our Houston office when my phone rang. It was Ethan. His voice sounded off, tense and hesitant. "Mom, I need a favor." I smiled. "That sounds serious." "No, not serious, just... Sophia wants you to meet her parents. They're visiting from Paris. We booked Maison de Fleuve for Saturday night. Can you come?" I could hear faint French music in the background, probably Sophia choosing the playlist. "Of course," I said softly, "but you sound nervous." A pause. Then he whispered, almost embarrassed, "I just hope you can keep things simple. They're very elegant people, and I told them you live alone, work in an office, nothing fancy." "Simple?" I repeated. "You told them your mother was simple?" He rushed to fix it. "I didn't mean it that way, Mom. I just don't want them to get the wrong impression. Sophia's sensitive about money. I want everything to go smoothly." I hung up before the anger reached my voice. The room went still. Sunlight stretched across the wooden floor like a quiet reminder. For years I'd heard strangers look down on me, but hearing my own son describe me as a burden wrapped in modesty, that hurt in a way words couldn't explain. I looked around the small apartment, the old wooden chair, the chipped porcelain vase, the 10-year-old TV. Nothing glamorous here, only truth and discipline. If Ethan and Sophia's family wanted to see a poor, fragile woman, I would let them, not just to test them, but to hold up a mirror to their own reflections. That night, I opened my closet. In the corner hung a wrinkled gray dress I usually wore to the market. I ran my hand over the faded fabric. Perfect. I picked out the scuffed shoes with the worn heels, tied my hair back, and removed all jewelry. My old canvas bag, once used for office files, would complete the role. In the mirror, a different woman stared back, tired eyes, unpolished hands, a quiet humility. A woman who lived day to day. I smiled. The performance was ready. Saturday evening, Savannah glowed under an amber sky. The river shimmered like melted gold. I hailed a cab. The driver, a kind man with a deep southern drawl, asked where I was headed. "Maison du Fleuve," I said. He whistled. "That place is fancy, ma'am. Tiny food, big prices." I laughed. "Just dinner with family." He looked at me through the mirror, nodded slowly. "Well, they'll remember tonight, that's for sure." I watched the city lights reflect on the window. So would I. The restaurant looked like wealth pretending to be grace. Tall glass doors, white curtains, waiters in gloves rehearsed to perfection. I stepped inside, small and unimportant, on purpose. Ethan was waiting near the window in a navy suit. Sophia stood beside him, elegant, polished, her perfume sharp as frost. When she saw me, her smile froze for half a second. "Mom!" "You made it," Ethan said, voice tight. His eyes flicked quickly, from my dress to my bag to my shoes, as if calculating the damage. "Of course I came," I said gently, letting my voice tremble like someone uncomfortable in rich places. Sophia hugged me briefly. Her lips were cold. "I'm glad you could come, Mrs. Reyes." At the end of the table sat Véronique and François Laurent, Parisians to the bone. She wore emerald silk and a string of pearls. He held his wine like an ornament. Their faces carried the calm of people used to being served, not spoken to. "This is Ethan's mother," Sophia introduced, her voice dropping half a tone. Véronique gave me a glance sharp enough to cut glass. Her handshake was brief and cool. "Enchantée," she said, already looking away. I bowed slightly. "Pleasure to meet you." François nodded politely.
"Bienvenue, madame."
No one pulled out my chair. I sat at the far end of the table, the seat with the weakest light, perfect. The menu was in French. I pretended to squint. Véronique leaned forward with a smile too practiced. "Would you like help choosing, dear?" "I'm not familiar with these words," I said softly. "Then I'll order something simple for you," she replied, turning to the waiter. "No need for anything expensive, right?" The words hit the table like acid drops. Ethan avoided my gaze. Sophia stared into her glass. The meal began. Véronique talked about their flight, the $1,000 hotel with a river view, and the little shopping they did. Only a few thousand. Every story ended with her eyes on me, waiting for awe. I only smiled. "How lovely for you." "We work hard, you know," she said proudly. "François runs a few companies in Paris." "And you? What do you do?" "I work in an office," I answered. "Mostly paperwork." She exchanged a look with her husband. "Ah, administration. Honest, humble work. Admirable." I smiled. All work is. The steak arrived. Véronique cut a piece slowly. $80, she said, but worth every cent. Only those who truly appreciate quality can understand value. "Yes," I replied. "You're absolutely right." François joined in. "Ethan says you live alone. That must be hard. Office pay doesn't go far, I suppose." "I manage," I said calmly. "I don't need much." Véronique tilted her head, her voice smooth but sharp. "Remarkable. Not everyone has the courage to live so simply." Ethan's knuckles whitened under the table. Sophia said nothing. I just sat there, watching the candlelight dance in the glass, letting every word sink in, collecting data like evidence. Because I knew this dinner was only the beginning. But I wasn't angry. I felt something colder, the calm before a reveal. I'd met hundreds like them, people fluent in French but illiterate in humanity. I lifted my water glass, smiling faintly. "What an interesting evening," I said. Véronique smiled back. "Indeed." "We still have much to discuss. About family." She looked at Ethan, then at me. I placed my glass down. Outside, the Savannah River shimmered under the candlelight, a quiet stage waiting for its curtain to rise. And I knew. Tonight would be the biggest performance of my life. I once read that contempt is never loud. It hides in glances and soft words, and where they choose to seat you. And that night at Maison de Fleuve, humiliation came dressed as etiquette. Outside the window, the Savannah River glowed crimson under the sunset. Inside, the golden light poured down on white tablecloths and polished silver. Every clink of glass felt like a heartbeat. I sat at the end of the table, the guest seat. Not by accident. I was invited, but not welcomed. Véronique sat at the head, turning her glass of red wine. The light hit her pearls, gleaming like armor for someone who never loses. Sophia smiled politely, trying to keep the peace. Ethan's eyes darted nervously toward me, as if terrified I'd say something unsuitable. I smiled back. The perfect picture of a quiet, slightly clumsy mother. The waiter placed menus in front of us. Thick paper, French text, no prices. I pretended to squint. Immediately, Véronique leaned in with a smile that wasn't kind. "Would you like help? The menu here can be overwhelming." I nodded shyly. Yes, I'm not used to such fancy places. Oh, that's all right, she said smoothly. I'll order something simple for you. Nothing too expensive. Then she turned to the waiter, half in English, half in French. Un petit plat du jour for madame. No wine. She doesn't drink, do you? I smiled softly. No, I don't. Lovely, she said, taking a sip of her own wine. That saves quite a bit. The words fell like acid on white linen. No one laughed. Only the sound of silverware scraping porcelain. Francois tried to shift the tone. So, Ethan says you live alone in Savannah? Yes, I answered. I enjoy the quiet. Must be simple living, I imagine. Not many needs? Not many, I said, eyes drifting toward the river light. I like reading, morning walks, that's enough. He nodded with polite pity. Admirable. I couldn't do it at my age. Maybe you've never tried, I said gently. He froze. Veronique forced a smile. Francois, don't make her uncomfortable. What matters is that Ethan is successful. That's what counts. I looked at my son. He kept his head down, silent. Dinner arrived. A small plate of steamed fish and vegetables, decorated like art. Veronique's dish, Wagyu steak, caviar, and a bottle of wine worth more than most people's rent. As the waiter poured, she looked up, voice raised just enough. Would you like a taste, dear? I don't drink, I repeated. Ah, yes, she said softly. They say red wine calms the nerves, but I suppose not everyone has the taste for it. I set down my fork. I think respect does more for the nerves than wine. The table froze. Ethan's eyes widened. Sophia stopped breathing. Veronique's smile stayed, but it cracked just a little. When dessert came, she set her glass down and folded her arms. Well, let's talk practically. My husband and I adore Ethan, but of course Sophia needs stability and the right image of family. I tilted my head. What do you mean by right image? Oh, don't misunderstand. I just think, if you'd like to stay close to them, we could help. A small monthly allowance, perhaps. Call it hospitality. An allowance? I repeated quietly. Francois joined in, thinking he was being kind. No offense, of course. We just want to make things easier for you. Maybe $500-700 a month, something comfortable. They said it with that syrupy tone of wealthy people who believe generosity is the same as superiority. Sophia kept her head down. Ethan tried to speak, but Veronique raised her hand. Don't interrupt, darling. The adults are talking. Then she turned to me again, smiling sweetly. We only want to make sure you don't feel left out. It would be better if you gave them some space, yes? I looked her in the eye. No anger, no fear, just absolute clarity. So you'd pay me $700 a month? To stay out of sight? Francois stammered. You misunderstand. I understand perfectly, I cut in. You think respect can be bought. Silence. Only the soft lapping of river waves against the dock, like a countdown to something inevitable. Veronique leaned forward, still pretending calm. There's no need to be defensive. We're just trying to help. Help, I echoed, smiling faintly. I've worked 30 years, bought my own house, raised my child. I don't owe anyone a cent. I don't need help living my life. The air went still. Even the candlelight seemed to pause. Ethan looked at me, half frightened, half in awe. I turned the glass slowly in my hand. But if you want to talk about money, I said, let's talk money. Veronique frowned. What do you mean? How much did you pay for the kids' house? I asked. About $40,000 for the deposit. The honeymoon in Santorini? $15,000. So $55,000 in total. Francois frowned. Why does that matter? I smiled, just trying to understand the going rate for family affection. The air cracked like thunder. Veronique forced a brittle laugh. My, you are direct. But perhaps we shouldn't turn a pleasant evening into a negotiation. Oh, it's not a negotiation, I said softly. It's an experiment. An experiment? Yes, I wanted to see how you'd treat me when you thought I was poor. The words landed like a stone in still water. Silence. Only the piano in the distance kept playing. Ethan froze. Sophia looked up, eyes wide, and Veronique's smile finally vanished. I reached into my canvas bag and set it on the table. I didn't come here to ask for money. I came to see who at this table understands respect, without a price tag. Francois shifted uncomfortably. I don't follow. You tried to buy me for $700, I said quietly. But I've paid for truth with 30 years of my life. Veronique's hand tightened around her wine glass. Her voice dropped, cold. Perhaps we should end this conversation. I don't like your tone. I stood slowly, smoothed my wrinkled dress. Neither do I, but I'll stay, because I'm not done yet. The air was heavy enough to slice. Outside, the Savannah River shimmered under a thin silver moon. In my mind, I heard my late husband's voice. Never let anyone decide the price of your dignity. I turned back, calm and steady. All right, I said. If you want to talk about money, I'll tell you exactly how much I make. Veronique's brows arched. I beg your pardon? I know. That's what intrigues you. I placed my hands on the table. For 20 years, I've earned $40,000 a month. I oversee 5 regions and hundreds of employees, and not once have I needed $700 to exist. Francois froze mid-sip. Sophia gasped. Ethan stared at me, speechless. Veronique's face lost all color. I leaned back, my voice soft but firm. You wanted to know how poor I was? I'm poor in only one way. I believed kindness was free, but tonight I learned it has a price. That sentence cut through the air like glass. I saw every face at that table. Guilt, shame, confusion. And I realized every performance has a purpose if it forces people to see themselves clearly. That night the dinner went on, but every smile had died. And I knew the real power game had only just begun. The silence after my words could have been sliced with a knife. Outside, the Savannah River kept flowing, calm, steady, reflecting lights like falling stars. But inside Maison de Fleuve, the air had changed color, from honey gold to storm gray. Thick, charged, waiting to break. Veronique sat perfectly upright. That fake smile stuck to her face like cracked paint. You said $40,000 a month? That's right. From your little office job. No, I said softly. I'm the regional operations director. I oversee 5 states. I'm not bragging. I'm just correcting the woman who tried to buy my silence for $700. Francois choked on his drink. Sophia dropped her fork. And Ethan straightened up, a look in his eyes I'd never seen before. Something between awe and shame. I kept my tone calm, my words precise. You said you wanted to help me, but I don't need help. I've worked my whole life so I'd never have to hold out my hand to anyone. And don't forget, without me, your daughter wouldn't have the husband she's so proud of today. Veronique's lips curved. Ah, yes, must be the good genes. No, I said, the work ethic. I placed my napkin down. Every eye turned toward me, realizing the woman they'd looked down on was sitting on a mountain they never knew existed. Then, Veronique laughed, low, icy, defensive. Money doesn't define everything. I agree, I replied. That's why I've never used it to make anyone feel small. Francois folded his hands. Perhaps there's been some misunderstanding. Veronique just wanted to be kind. We all want what's best for Ethan and Sophia. I turned to him. Then you should start with respect. Ethan lowered his head. Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't mean, I stopped him with a raised hand. Don't, Ethan. I'm not angry, but I need you to see this clearly. I looked around the table. My whole career, I've watched men sit at the head while women poured the water. I stayed quiet long enough to watch arrogance expose itself, but tonight, I'm done being quiet. A breeze moved the curtain beside us. For a moment, I remembered the mornings in my Charleston office, watching cargo ships leave the port, signing contracts that changed whole regions. No one knew my name. But real power doesn't need to announce itself. I turned back to Veronique. You asked how I live. Here's the truth. I live by discipline and dignity. I'm rich, not because of money, but because I choose my own path. She flipped her hair, bitter. Then why pretend to be poor? To embarrass us? No, I said, eyes steady, to see how you'd treat someone you thought didn't matter. Francois leaned back. This is the strangest dinner I've ever attended. I smiled. Then it's probably the truest one. Sophia finally spoke, her voice shaking. Carmen? I didn't know. I'm so sorry you had to hear all that. I looked at her gently. Don't be sorry. If not for tonight, I wouldn't know who's real and who's pretending. Then I turned to Ethan. See, son, that one little phrase you used, keep it simple, unlocked everything. He swallowed hard. Mom, I just didn't want them to judge you. I nodded. But you judged me first, Ethan. His head dropped, hands trembling on the table. Sophia reached for him, her eyes wet. Suddenly, Veronique stood up, her chair screeching on the floor. I don't need a moral lecture. You could be a CEO or a saint. I don't care. My daughter doesn't need to live under your shadow. I rose slowly, calm as still water. I don't want anyone under my shadow, I said. I just want them to see their own light. Francois cut in sharply. Enough! We're in public. This isn't appropriate. I met his eyes. If you fear losing face, perhaps don't strip others of their dignity first. The waiter arrived quietly with the check. Veronique motioned for it, but I reached first. I'll pay, I said. That's unnecessary, she snapped. I don't accept charity. You misunderstand, I said, pulling out a sleek black card. I'm not offering charity. I'm ending a performance with truth. I laid the card on the table. The metal gleamed under the light. Amex Centurion, I said clearly. No limit. But don't mistake it for status. It's just a tool for people who know who they are. The waiter took it speechless. Veronique gave a dry laugh. Impressive. I've never seen someone draw a credit card like a sword. I smiled faintly. Sometimes truth needs to be drawn. Her eyes narrowed. Maybe teach your son humility instead of morals. Humility, I said softly, is knowing your worth, not shrinking to make others comfortable. Francois sighed. This has gone far enough. I agree, I said. But remember, no one goes further than those who think money gives them the right to define others. The waiter returned. Payment approved, Mrs. Reyes. I nodded. Thank you. Veronique's eyes darted around, looking for a graceful exit that didn't exist. I pushed my chair back, stood tall. I'll be leaving. Thank you for the dinner, and for the lesson. It was expensive, but worth every cent. No one spoke. I walked toward the door, heels clicking softly against the marble floor. The live jazz in the corner swelled as I passed. At the doorway, I turned one last time. Ethan looked up, regret and pride mingling in his eyes. Sophia's hand rested on his shoulder, a silent apology. And Veronique sat frozen, her lips tight, her power finally cracked. Outside, the night air was cool against my skin. The wind from the river carried a hint of salt and rain. I didn't open my umbrella. I let it fall. Each drop washing away the residue of pretense. Before stepping into the taxi, I remembered something my mother once told me. You never have to prove your worth. Just stand still and the truth will shine for you. I smiled. Tonight, it did. No shouting, no anger, just the quiet power of a woman who has nothing left to prove. As the taxi pulled away from Maison du Fleuve, the restaurant's glowing windows faded into shadow, and I, the simple woman with not much, sat straight-backed, silent, radiant with something money could never buy. $700 couldn't purchase respect. But tonight, I reclaimed it, with truth. I've grown used to being underestimated. Not because I'm weak, but because people judge women by what we show, not what we build in silence. That night, after dinner at Maison du Fleuve, I went back to my little Bay Street apartment. Streetlights striped the walls in broken gold. I brewed ginger tea and sat in the wooden chair by the window, the place I go when I need to remember where I came from. I was born in a working-class neighborhood in Corpus Christi, Texas. Dad worked the docks. Mom took night shifts at the laundromat. I grew up on the smell of machine oil and saved pennies. When I was small, I thought rich meant new shoes and air conditioning. Then one day my mother said, "Rich isn't having. Rich is not being afraid to lose." That line followed me my whole life. I got through school on scholarships, shelving books at the library, cleaning hotel rooms. No one opened doors for me. What I had, no one could take. Discipline. While others went out, I learned Excel, bookkeeping, and business English. I slept 4 hours a night and tracked every expense. Coffee, socks, everything. Not because I was stingy, but because I wanted freedom. At 27, I joined an international shipping company, entry-level admin. Container schedules, bills of lading. $2,400 a month, but I learned everything. Process, contracts, codes, even how my boss's face looked when layoffs were coming. I'll never forget a night in 1996 when a storm slammed the Gulf. Logistics froze. My boss called at midnight. "Carmen, we lost the month's bills of lading. Do you have a backup?" "I do, sir." I mirrored everything last week. Silence. Then, "You just saved the company." That changed my career. I didn't hop jobs. I climbed assistant, lead, manager, regional operations director for the Southeast. No Ivy League, no glittering network, just one rule: do it right, do it solid, do it early. By 40, I was earning $40,000 a month. I didn't tell anyone, coworkers, friends, not even the full truth to my husband, Bill. Bill was a gentle, practical mechanical engineer. We met when I still paid gas on a store card. He didn't marry me because I was impressive. He married me because I made him feel steady. When Ethan was born, Bill said, "We teach him this. Money isn't for showing off. It's for keeping promises." That became my compass. Then Bill died, sudden stroke on a February morning. The Houston house was too empty, so I moved to Savannah for quiet and a restart. I didn't buy a new car, didn't upgrade my phone, didn't wear labels. I raised Ethan in simplicity so he'd learn to stand on his own 2 feet, not lean on mine. Maybe that's why he never truly knew who his mother was. I sipped my tea and watched the window fog. A train horn thinned the night. People see the present and forget that the past is the foundation. I never thought of myself as rich. Rich, to me, is choosing your life without fear of a boss or a bill. I never used money to prove my worth, but if someone tries to price a human being, they're going to see the whole value. The next morning, Ethan came by, in a white shirt, face drawn. "Mom, you embarrassed them last night." I told the truth. "You made Sophia uncomfortable," she cried. "If she cried because I'm not poor," I said, "those tears weren't shame. They were a broken illusion. He went quiet. I softened. Son, people don't reject truth because it's wrong. They reject it because it reflects what they fear most. He sat, hand shaking. I just want peace. I was afraid they'd think you were less. Less? I smiled. Who's higher, Ethan, the grateful, or the condescending? He bowed his head. I wasn't angry, just tender. He grew up between two worlds, a mother who worked herself thin and Sophia, born in satin. He wanted harmony, but silence in the face of contempt is still a kind of betrayal. Don't apologize to me, I said softly. I don't need it. I want you to learn not to let anyone define your worth, not me, not them. After he left, I opened a small wooden box, copies of my first contracts, old employee badges, and a letter Bill wrote in 2003. If they forget who you are, let them talk, then prove it with calm. I smiled. I did that last night, Bill. I could still see Veronique's face when she heard $40,000 a month. It wasn't money. It was the memory of sweat, resilience, and every time I outlived someone's disdain. That afternoon, a text from Sophia. I'm sorry. Can we meet? Just us. I read it and waited. Let her feel what I've felt, being held at arm's length under polite pity. I closed my phone and looked in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't the simple mom they imagined. She was the woman who bought her freedom with her own hands. Night settled. Savannah glowed in mist. I stepped onto the balcony, river light like silver ribbon. I thought of Veronique. I wasn't angry. I was sorry. She has everything, money, status, the best seat in the room, but not peace. I have less and I sleep just fine. I own no one and I don't make others small to feel big. Rich is freedom. Poor is fear. Money can't buy class. It only amplifies the heart that holds it. I whispered those lines before lights out. Tomorrow, I'll meet Sophia. We'll see whether she and Ethan choose truth or comfort. I made my choice long ago. The next morning, rain drummed softly on Savannah's iron balconies. Steady, precise, like a clock counting down. I brewed my coffee and unlocked my phone. Sophia's message still waited, unread. Mom, I'm so sorry. They shouldn't have said those things. Please, let me see you. Then another one appeared, from Ethan. Mom, we're having lunch with Sophia's parents today. They want to talk again, to make peace. I think you should come. Make peace. I laughed under my breath. For people like Veronique, peace meant erasing the past, as long as she still got to win. But I said yes, not to win, to end it. At noon, I put on a crisp white shirt and black trousers. No wrinkled dress, no canvas bag. The disguise was over. I arrived 10 minutes early. Maison du Fleuve looked sharper in daylight, no candlelight to soften the edges. Veronique sat with a cappuccino, flawless as ever, though her eyes looked tired. Francois scrolled his tablet, muttering in French. Ethan and Sophia sat opposite, uneasy. When I approached, Veronique lifted her head and smiled, cool and polite. Ah, you came. I was afraid last night scared you off. I don't avoid anyone, I said. I just show up on time. Good, she replied, setting down her cup. We should clear the air. I admit I might have been a bit blunt, but you must understand, I only care about my daughter and her husband. I understand, I said calmly. Every mother worries differently. Francois added, we're all adults. Emotions shouldn't ruin relationships, I nodded. Exactly. Which is why, if we started with money last night, we should end today with the truth. They didn't understand what I meant. I placed my wallet on the table. The waiter came with menus. Veronique repeated her old routine, ordered wine, the most expensive dish, talking endlessly about authentic European taste. I asked only for lemon tea. Through the meal they pretended politeness, but arrogance still shimmered beneath the surface. Whenever money came up, Veronique would chuckle, "Oh, we don't care about money-only class." I smiled, because I knew she was walking straight into her own trap. When the check arrived, Veronique's hand shot up. "Allow me. Think of it as an apology." I didn't stop her. I simply watched. She pulled out a sleek gold card, handing it to the waiter with the grace of habit. The waiter nodded and walked away. The table went still. A few minutes later, she returned, soft voice, steady eyes. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Your card was declined." Veronique froze. "That's impossible. Try again." I did, twice. The woman said gently, "International verification issue, perhaps." Francois muttered a curse in French, then handed over his platinum card. "Use this one." Another minute passed. The waiter came back, voice unchanged. "I'm afraid this one didn't go through either, sir." Possibly a temporary hold from the bank. Silence spread across the table like frost. Ethan stared down. Sophia's cheeks flushed pink. Veronique forced a smile. "Just a technical glitch. We'll settle later." The waiter nodded, uncomfortable. I spoke softly. "No need to wait. I'll take care of it." All eyes turned to me. I opened my wallet and drew out the black Amex Centurion. No flourish, no pause. Just quiet certainty. The metal caught the light, cool and final. The waiter blinked. Maybe it was the first one she'd ever seen. "Charge it to table 14, I said, "and add a 25% tip." She nodded and hurried away. Veronique's lips trembled. "There's really no need." "I know," I said, "but I want to." Francois folded his tablet, expression caught between awe and irritation. Ethan's hands clenched in his lap. Sophia's eyes shone with tears she couldn't explain. The waiter returned. "All set, ma'am." "Payment approved." "Thank you," I said. Then I turned to Veronique calm, almost gentle. "You asked why I pretended to be poor. Because truth doesn't need a costume. I just wanted to see what you'd do when you thought you stood above someone." Veronique gripped her coffee cup, her face reddening. "Are you trying to humiliate me?" "No," I said evenly. "You did that yourself. When you lost respect, you lost face." Francois tried to intervene. "We can explain, please. Let's not turn this into—" "No explanation needed," I said. "Truth doesn't need a lawyer." I stood. A hush rippled through the restaurant. People turned to look, two elegant French patrons, humiliated, and the simple woman from yesterday, walking out taller than ever. I left the receipt on the table. On the back, I'd written in pen, "Money can't buy class. It only reveals who has a heart and who doesn't." Then I faced Sophia. "Sweetheart, this lunch is a lesson. Being rich isn't about what you have. It's about knowing what's worth paying for." She nodded, voice trembling. "I understand, Mom." Veronique glared, pride and pain warring in her eyes. "I hope you're satisfied." "I don't need satisfaction," I said quietly. "Only peace." Outside, the rain had stopped. Sunlight broke through, painting the river in silver. I paused and looked at the Centurion card in my hand, a small piece of metal that held 30 years of my life. To me, it wasn't power. It was freedom. No one could ever help me, buy me, or define me again. The taxi driver was the same man as before with his kind smile. "Back from Maison du Fleuve again, ma'am?" "Guess you won today," I laughed. "No one wins. Some people just learn." He nodded. "Sometimes they gotta see you don't need 'em. That's when they finally see you." "You're right," I said. "Thank you for getting it." When we reached my building, I handed him the fare and a $20 tip. He shook his head. "You don't have to, ma'am." "Take it," I smiled. Kindness deserves to be paid for. He grinned. Plenty of folks with money never figure that out. I know, I said softly. That night, I opened Bill's old notebook. On one page, his handwriting. When truth stands before money, let money fall silent. I traced the words with my finger as rain began again outside. I'd done exactly what he taught me, not to prove wealth, but to defend dignity. Veronique could keep her fortune. I had something better, freedom that can't be bought. Money can't buy class. I didn't defeat her. I defeated the fear inside me. My corporate. I never went back to Maison du Fleuve. Once you've stood up from a table where you were disrespected, you never sit in that chair again. 3 days after that lunch, life returned to its rhythm. Work calls, contracts, shipping reports, quiet evenings. No one knew I'd just humbled one of Savannah's proudest families. And I didn't need them to know. Peace, for me, has never been loud. That afternoon, the doorbell rang. When I opened it, Sophia stood there. No makeup, no heels, just a pale linen dress and trembling hands. Mom, can I come in? Of course. She sat on the sofa, fingers twisting together. I don't know what to say except, I'm sorry. I poured her a cup of chamomile tea. It helps you breathe, I said softly. She nodded, eyes wet. I didn't know they treated you like that. They thought you were someone else. But I'm just as guilty because I let them. I sat across from her. It's not your fault, Sophia. You've been living in the world they built for you. But it's time to choose, to be loved for fitting in or respected for being yourself. Tears rolled down her cheeks. That day, when my mother's card was declined, I saw her hands shake. I'd never seen that in my life. I met her gaze. That was the moment truth touched pride. It makes people tremble, because they're not used to feeling small. Sophia sniffled, her voice trembling. I grew up believing money meant safety, but when I saw you hand over that black card, I realized safety is knowing you owe no one. I said nothing. In that silence, she stopped being the rich daughter-in-law. She became a woman finally growing up. 10 minutes later, Ethan arrived. He stood at the doorway for a long moment before coming in. I didn't know Sophia was here, he murmured. Good, I said. We need to talk, all three of us. He looked uneasy. I've been thinking about everything. I kept chasing peace, but all I did was let you get hurt. Peace isn't silence, I said. Silence feeds what's wrong, and one day it eats the peace you were trying to protect. Ethan nodded slowly. I saw that in Veronique's eyes. She didn't understand that you didn't win with money. You won with calm. I smiled faintly. I didn't need to win, son. I just needed to be seen clearly. Ethan volved. Sophia reached for his hand. I talked to my mom, she said quietly. I told her she owes you an apology. Ethan blinked. And she said only poor people need forgiveness. The rich just need to forget. I smiled. She's half right. Truly rich people know how to forget, not others' mistakes, but their own pride. Ethan sighed. Mom, you always make me feel ashamed, but in a way that makes me want to do better. Good, I said. Shame is the beginning of awareness. I stood and walked to the window. Late sunlight spilled through the curtains, painting the room gold. Listen to me, I said, voice firm but warm. Love, marriage, money. They all change, but one thing, once lost, never returns. Dignity. I turned to Ethan. You let someone speak of your mother with contempt and said nothing. Next time, if someone does that to Sophia, you'll know how it feels. He nodded. I promise, Mom. Then I faced Sophia. And you, my dear, if you truly love my son, remember this. Marriage isn't two families competing for status. It's two people learning how to keep kindness alive in a world obsessed with display. Sophia wiped her tears and nodded, resolute. I understand. I'll protect that. They left after sunset. At the door, Ethan turned back. Mom, if you'll allow, I want to invite you to dinner next week, just us, no one else. I studied him, then nodded. All right, but this will be the last invitation I accept under conditions. If anyone disrespects me again, I'll walk out, and I won't come back. He swallowed. Understood, that won't happen again. When the door closed, silence returned. Soft, familiar. I poured another cup of tea. Steam rose in amber light, curling like memory. That night, I opened my journal. Not to remember, but to draw a boundary. August 17th, Maison du Fleuve. A boundary isn't a wall, it's a mirror. When people cross it, they see their own smallness. I closed the notebook and smiled. I once thought leaving meant losing. Now I know. Leaving at the right time is a silent victory. 3 days later, an envelope arrived. No return address. Inside, a white card with black ink. Thank you for showing me who I am. Veronique. No apology, no explanation, but it was enough, because in her world, acknowledging truth was already an act of humility. I folded the card and placed it beside a photo. Bill and Ethan when he was little. Bill once said, "One day our son will choose the right side." I think today, he finally did. The next afternoon, Sophia called. Mom, I'm doing something new. I quit my parents' company. I want to work on my own. I smiled. Then today you finally started living honestly. I want to learn from you, she said. Not how to make money, how to stand. Standing strong, I told her, doesn't mean you never fall. It means knowing where you fell and standing up in the right place. She laughed through her tears. Thank you, Mom. That night, I walked by the river. Savannah glowed, damp, golden, alive. Streetlights shimmered across the water like cracks mended with gold. I remembered my mother's words. Some tables you sit at only once, just to remember what hypocrisy smells like. Then you go home, wash your hands, and live clean. I smiled. She was right. My dinner was over. All that remained was silence, and the boundary I redrew for myself. Not everyone who leaves the table loses. Sometimes, it's the only one strong enough not to sell their peace. I stood there, listening to the water touch the shore. No anger, no pride, just clarity. Tomorrow, the sun would rise again, and I, the woman once called poor and simple, would wake in my little home, make my tea, and feel light as the wind. I woke up early the next morning. Savannah light slid through the white curtains, a pale yolk yellow. I brewed a pot of lavender tea, set it by the window, and settled into the old wooden chair. From there, I could see the river glittering, gulls circling over the water. I kept my rituals sit still, let the mind quiet. But today felt different. Not peace exactly, more like a quiet shift inside me, as if someone else was finally beginning to understand something. My phone buzzed. A message from Sophia. Mom, can I stop by? I want to tell you something. I wrote back simply. The door's open. About 40 minutes later, she arrived. No rushed elegance, no designer bag, just jeans, a white linen shirt, hair tied low, eyes puffy from no sleep, but her gaze had changed. I didn't sleep all night, she said, voice unsteady. I need to say this before things go too far. I poured tea. My parents called first thing. She went on. They said I'm losing direction. That you're manipulating me, pulling me away from family. I looked straight at her. And you said? She took a long breath. I said, if I have to lose myself just to please other people, that's the same as living without breathing. I nodded. That's a good answer. Sophia sat across from me, hands clenched. You know, when I got home yesterday, I found the Maison du Fleuve receipt you left in your wallet. I kept it. I read what you wrote beneath it. Money can't buy class. It only exposes who has a heart and who doesn't. She gave a sad smile. I kept turning that over. I realized I've been living in an illusion that class is something passed down by a last name, but really, it's just how we treat people. I stayed quiet. I didn't need to say anything. In that moment, Sophia stepped over the invisible line between being taught how to live and knowing how to live. I quit my parents' company, she said. I raised an eyebrow. You're sure? I'm sure. They're angry, of course. But I've applied to a non-profit working on green logistics. They need a coordinator. I think this might be the first time I'm doing something that's right for me. I smiled. You know, when you choose the thing that scares you for the right reasons, that's you choosing to grow up. She gave a watery laugh. I'm afraid they'll hate me. But then I remembered what you said. Truth doesn't need a costume. If they really love me, they'll learn to respect me. I nodded. And if they don't, you have to be ready to lose them. She inhaled. I'm ready. Ethan arrived a little later, looking like he hadn't slept either. I just came from Sophia's parents, he said. Her mother's furious. She says you've bewitched me. I chuckled. Does she believe in magic? No, Ethan said, smiling faintly. But I do, because for the first time in my life, I can see who's truly strong. Sophia turned to him. I told my mother I don't need their money. I want us to start over, from scratch. No wedding gifts, no stipends. Ethan looked at her, then at me, eyes bright. Mom, I've never seen her this sure. I looked at the two of them. When a woman decides to stand on her own feet, the world around her will shake. But if the man beside her truly loves her, he'll help her stand steadier, not shakier. Ethan took his wife's hand. I promise, Mom. A light breeze slipped through the window. The scent of tea drifted, cool as a far-off memory. I said, you know, I'm not angry with Veronique. She's reacting the way people used to react to me when I was young, afraid of what they don't understand. Sophia asked softly, were you ever afraid? I smiled. Of course. Fear keeps us humble. But to beat it, you have to do the very thing that makes your hands shake. She nodded, eyes brightening. I think I get it now. That afternoon, as they were leaving, Sophia paused at the door and turned back. I want you to teach me how to make your clam chowder. The first time you cooked it, my family said it smelled fishy. But now I think, that smell is honest like life, not always perfumed. I laughed. Deal. But remember, you have to lift the lid at the right time or the clams get tough. Yes, she said, warmth in her eyes. I'll learn. Ethan wrapped an arm around her shoulders. We'll come by this weekend. Good, I said. Bring your hearts. No need to bring wine. They laughed and stepped out. I stood in the doorway, watching them disappear between the live oaks draped in green moss. Something melted inside me. Not pride, peace. Bill used to say, one day our son won't need us to protect him. When that day comes, let him protect what's right. I think that day arrived. Near dusk, a call came from an unknown number. Veronique's voice on the other end, low, cool, but the edge was gone. Mrs. Reyes, she said, I hear my daughter quit. She says you inspired her. I don't know whether to thank you or blame you. Up to you, I said. But Sophia doesn't need inspiration. She just needs permission to see herself clearly. Silence. Then, slowly, maybe I misjudged you. I smiled. That's all right. I'm used to being misjudged. The funny thing is, when people finally see me clearly, they usually start seeing themselves more clearly too. A long exhale. Goodbye, Mrs. Reyes. Goodbye, Mrs. Laurent, I answered gently. Let's hope we both learn not to need apologies to feel tall. The call ended. The room felt like it had more air. That night I stepped onto the balcony. On the river, light stretched in long gold ribbons, soft as velvet. I thought of Sophia, the woman once tailored for a perfect mold, now snipping the seams to fit herself. I thought of Ethan, the man who once feared losing peace, now learning that real peace only comes when you face things head on. And I thought of myself, the woman once called simple and not upper class, sitting here, quiet and free. Awakening isn't when you figure out who's wrong. It's when you realize how long you've been silent. I closed my eyes and listened to the wind over the water. Tomorrow, Sophia would start her new job. Ethan would walk beside her. And me, I'd keep brewing tea, reading the news, living slow. Because sometimes the biggest change isn't in other people at all. It's in the moment you stop needing to prove anything. A week later, Savannah shimmered in the morning light. I stood by the stove, stirring clam chowder. Steam fogged the window, the scent of ginger and scallion blended with sea salt. The spoon tapped softly against the pot steady, like the slow heartbeat of the house. Then came a knock. Ethan and Sophia stepped in, carrying a basket of daisies and 2 loaves of warm bread. I thought you'd like these, Sophia said, setting the flowers on the table. Of course, I smiled. I've always loved things that don't need ribbons. She laughed and handed me an envelope. Inside was her official offer letter from the nonprofit she'd mentioned. I got the job, she said, eyes glowing. They're sending me to Charleston to lead a project on reducing transport emissions. I nodded. What a coincidence. That's where I started, years ago, at the Charleston docks. And now I'll continue it, Sophia smiled. Ethan looked at her proudly. I can't remember the last time she looked this happy. Warmth filled my chest, soft and steady. We sat down to eat. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, spilling gold across the amber table. Sophia scooped a spoonful of chowder, blew gently, and laughed. Still smells as fishy as I remember. That's the smell of real things, I said. Everything real carries its own scent. Only fake things leave no trace. For a moment, no one spoke. Ethan looked up, eyes glistening. Mom, I need to tell you something. I'm listening. I called Mrs. Veronique. I told her if she ever disrespects you again, I won't visit her house. She was silent for a long time, then said, Seems my son has chosen sides. I smiled slowly. You didn't choose sides, Ethan. You just chose the right direction. The meal ended in warmth and laughter. When we cleared the table, Sophia stood by the window. Mom, I've never seen Savannah look this beautiful. It's beautiful because you're seeing it with eyes that have let go, I said. Let go of what? Other people's expectations. She paused, then whispered, I think I get it. When you stop trying to please everyone, that's when you finally learn how to love. I gazed out at the river. Far away, white sails drifted slowly, like memories leaving the shore. Exactly, I murmured. True love always needs space to breathe. Before leaving, Sophia hugged me tightly. Thank you, Mom, she said softly. Not just for forgiving me, but for never turning me into an enemy just because I didn't understand. I brushed her hair back. We all have days of not understanding, but only the brave come back to make things right. Ethan took my hand. Mom, I'm selling the old house. We're getting a smaller one near Sophia's new job. We want to start over, on our own. I smiled. You've learned the most important lesson. Starting over is never too late if it's for the right reason. They left, and the house filled with the scent of daisies and truth. That evening, I stepped out onto the balcony. Savannah's sunset was breathtaking. Gold moss church bells echoing, the river mirroring my younger self. I closed my eyes, wind brushing through my gray hair. Bill's voice echoed in my memory. Carmen, you'll always be torn between being loved and being respected. Choose respect. Real love can't exist without it. I opened my eyes and whispered, "You were right, Bill." I chose well. Back inside, I opened my old journal. On the last page was a line I'd written the night after that first dinner at Maison de Fleuve. Sometimes silence is the loudest declaration. I added a new line beneath it. And walking away at the right time is the purest proof of dignity. Outside, dusk turned violet. Street lights shimmered on the water like spilled ink. A soft knock on the door. The mailman. "Mrs. Reyes?" "Package from Charleston." I signed, opened it. Inside, a photo of Sophia standing in front of her new office, radiant. Beneath it, in her handwriting, "Mom, I've just opened the first page of my real life. Thank you for teaching me. I don't need a disguise." I ran a finger over the picture, eyes misting. That night, I walked back to the river. The city was calm. The wind carried salt and damp grass. A group of young people passed by, laughter rippling like water. I remembered my first day at Maison du Fleuve. Small, judged, underestimated, and how, step by step, truth began to shine. Without shouting, without proving, just by standing still. I smiled, watching the distant lights. Dignity doesn't need an audience. It only needs one witness, yourself. As the wind shifted, carrying the scent of tea and soft waves, Savannah felt like a lullaby. I knew my story had reached its quiet close, but its lesson would live on in women like Sophia and in anyone ever dismissed for being too simple. If you're hearing this story, if you've ever been looked down on for being plain, if you've ever pretended to be less just to test someone's heart, I hope you know this. You have nothing to prove. Just live right, stand tall, and let the truth speak for itself. If my story touched you, share your thoughts in the comments and tell me, where in the world are you listening from? Don't forget to like and subscribe so we can keep sharing stories where dignity still matters more than money and where truth always has its own light.